Wheel of Genre, the show for listeners who like their short stories with a side of the ick. Right now, we are reading every short story in Harlan Ellison's anthology, Dangerous Visions, including this one right here, Poul Anderson's Eutopia. I'm Zach. This week, I'm really interested in, I'm interested in the twist ending and whether the twist ending was necessary and whether the twist ending was specifically there just because we're in an anthology called Dangerous Visions.
Bob, I'm interested in jargon and how it can be used to world build, and also interested in what kind of feels like sword and sandal thrown into sci-fi, or maybe sci-fi thrown into sword and sandal. Zach, it's all over the place. I feel like this is quite a story. It feels more like fantasy, a little bit like Conan the Barbarian, but it is quite sci-fi. What is happening in Eutopia?
So we have a traveler. Man goes out of town into a strange new world, but it's not the world of his own. It is the multiverse. He is traveling with a machine called check my notes, Paracronion, which allows people to travel into the multiverse, which is organized like the Yggdrasil, the Norse tree, into all these different alternate histories. So he comes from a land where ancient Greece never fell, basically. Alexander the Great's empire lasted. Alexander didn't die, and there's a Greek empire that lasted all the way into the far future. He comes from there. But he's traveling to a world that I could really only describe as like a Norse world, basically. He's up in the north. He's on the run. He's being chased from town to town. He keeps making reference to a lover of his named Nikki. And we learn that he's on the run because he had some sexual impropriety with someone in the previous town. So he's going, he's talking, he's finding refuge, but then he's found out. And the person says, I thought it was just a little thing, but you didn't tell me you were trying to destroy their family. But because of the hospitality laws, I have to escort you out. And then, he gets out, he escapes, he gets home, and it's like a punchline, I guess you could say, because he gets home and he says, that person who I had the sexual impropriety with, it was because they reminded me of Nikki back at home. But it's not Nikki like Nicole, it's Nikki as in Nikias, his boy lover.
Whoa. Yes. Do you think that is what the shock they were going for Dangerous Visions? The character is secretly gay. Whoa. Do you think that's what Harlan Ellison was so floored by here?
Like gay and like pedophilic. It's like because I think the age thing is really emphasized.
What's the age difference? I thought it wasn't that emphasized.
It's never said, but I think we're kind of playing off the ancient Greek ideas of, like
pederasty.
Yeah. I'm basing that off of the fact that he comes from a Greek world,
ancient Greek civilization.
Essentially.
They're called the Hellenes.
Yes. Yeah. I'm looking for. I didn't write down the quote. I'm not going to search it up just now, but he basically just says he's his boy lover at the end. So I don't know. For me, I think it's really interesting to have you know what it is? It reminds me of a Norm Macdonald joke where he goes on like a long, winding story about some topic, but then like the punchline is at the very end, and it's just like the dumbest wordplay punchline. But because you're so wrapped up in the story, the punchline kind of takes you by surprise. And the whole joke just exists for the stupid wordplay, punny punchline. But, that's what I would compare the story to. I don't know. What about you?
Okay, so I see you're right. So I forgot that since it is a ancient Greek world, and it is the idea as if the ancient Greek civilization never fell, that is shocking. When you learn about pederasty and all that was going on, that is shocking. So that would be a twist ending. it's kind of fun. You want to read everything in a real tough guy voice. It is, what seems like an ancient Greek warrior, but is someone traveling the stars. And then they go to, like you said, kind of a Viking territory. I mean, he goes to the king, and the king is sitting on this huge stone throne. He's got a saber, oh, not a saber, just this huge cutlass over his legs. He's staring down at him, and they just growl at each other, essentially. It's kind of fun, and it does feel like a Conan the Barbarian story. However, those are pretty obvious from the beginning what the goal is and what Conan's after. This is very like seat of the pants story. So it feels like Yasin or Jason is just trying to escape, like you said, and now I'm not really sure what they're after, but the idea of Eutopia and all the baggage that he is bringing with him to these other worlds, and how he's telling us how they're all barbarians, how they never learned to become a utopia like the Utopians. That was kind of interesting. It's just not told very well. As far as utopian fiction, which we've read before, do you feel like there are any interesting new takes? Is this an original utopia?
Yeah, I think that's a good question, because it is, we're told it's a utopia, but I don't think we actually get to see the utopia in action. What we do get is two things. We do get a critique of the utopian man, which I will read the direct quote. He's talking to a guy named Diamond Axe, and he says, "I only point out that each has its price. For what we enjoy at home, we pay dearly. We do not allow ourselves a single unthinking, merely felt impulse. By excluding danger and hardship, by eliminating distinctions between men, we leave no hopes of victory. Worst, perhaps, is this, that we have become pure individuals. We belong to no one. Our sole obligation is negative, not to compel any other individual. The state, an engineered organization, a faithless, undemanding mechanism, takes care of each need and each hurt. Where is loyalty unto death? Where is the intimacy of an entire shared lifetime? We play at ceremonies, but because we know they are arbitrary gestures. What is their value? Because we have made our world one. Where are color and contrast? Where is pride in being particularly ourselves?" So what we get, instead of actually seeing a physical description of this kind of utopia that he comes from, is really a more broad strokes gesturing towards what it is. And it's really, if you've ever read a dystopian novel like this, like you know essentially what they are. They're atomized individuals. They are totally distinct. They have no sense of community. They look a lot like us. I think that's what Poul Anderson wants to get at, is they look like us. But the reason why these two are having this conversation is because Diamond Axe is saying to Yasin or Jason, he's saying, our place is not the only like good place in the multiverse. It turns out there's another good place, and you were just in it. So like, I guess you could say another twist of the story is that these people who are living in these kind of like, sword and sorcery style Nordic small communities are also living the good life. And that's supposed to be a surprise. If not to us, it certainly is to Yasin. Do you feel like the message of the story resonates with you? Like does Diamond Axe's revelation strike a chord with you at all?
Yeah, well, I think it's an interesting way of looking at Utopia. When we read Sir Thomas More's Utopia, that's only one place contained. When we've seen Herland, that's one place people, outsiders, come in. This is interesting to have. You can travel to any location in this multiverse going through this weird tree. And now you can see other alternatives. And I guess that's an interesting idea as these two main alternatives. One that is extremely individual while still a group, but each person has their own personality. And then in this other one that I was saying might be, historical fiction taken too far, it's the Greek customs, but engineered. And it does feel very Harlan Ellison, like the the TikTok man. Repent Harlequin said the TikTok man, where everything is controlled. So I think it's interesting to have the contrast between two of these cultures right next to each other, and they're trying to decide who deserves to be in power and which one is correct. Either the one that has no danger and also no personality, or the one that has swords on their laps and all the personality. The loyalty until death, the intimacy of an entire shared lifetime, all of that. So I think you can look at two worlds that way.
And I feel like this is a distinction that we see all the time, and especially like mid 20th century adventure novels and just like the way people think. It seems like half the authors we read really want people to go into this like controlled society. You brought up Thomas More's Eutopia, which is a 16th century book, but since then people have been dreaming up utopias, which are really spectacles of control, like every aspect of a society planned out and managed. But then the other aspect, or rather the other view, is this idea that people these days are just too soft. Like you have all of these adventure writers who spend all their time talking about how the cities are making us fat and lazy and we're cut off from nature. So they create these kind of like, Ubermensch novels or superhero novels where you have a person going out into the wilderness or the jungle or, into Africa, like in the case of King Solomon's Mines and by H. Rider Haggard. With the idea being that by leaving civilization behind, you enter into a kind of tooth and nail world which is like the actual place where life takes meaning and it's possible to flourish. So, I guess what I'm trying to say is, he's not pulling these ideas from nowhere. These ideas are very much in the water at this time.
It's very much what we've seen in some of the Dangerous Visions stories too. Even you could say Harlan Ellison's story about Jack the Ripper is kind of like that, because they go into another utopia that is, I think, dwindled now down to 300 people, and they all hate it so much that they want a heinous murderer to come in and start killing everyone so they have something to be entertained by. These people have been living too long. There is no change in their society. So I think there is a kind of attitude in this Dangerous Visions that is very anti-stability or anti-utopia. I mean, they don't want anything that resembles the past or anything that resembles all of the other writers that they were reading. They want something daring and new and bold that is, somewhat like Conan the Barbarian, being barbaric, beating away the past, and then just trailblazing into something new.
I think that this might be the only Dangerous Vision story that is explicitly political, or at least in the sense of it explicitly talks about how to best run a city, or how best to have a culture. Can you think of anything else? Cities are present as background noise in many of these stories, but I can't think of one that's actively asking the question of what's the best way to live.
There's different ones that are about different systems of punishment, and also different systems like medical systems that they reflect what humanity has become. And I think that's a big part of Dangerous Visions too, is showing us a mirror. And this one is a very direct mirror of, if you make a society that is too ordered, that is utopian, this is what will happen. It's bland. Everything is gray. There's nothing important. There's nothing interesting. But in the Mali system, we have the punishment system of, if you figure out the best way to torture criminals, they will get over it. But that reflects back on society, saying, how do we treat criminals? How do we treat people who've done something wrong? What do we think about the human being? And I think too, in the story too, a couple stories ago about harvesting people's organs, as we advanced technology, we go further into what was science fiction, and now it becomes reality in these stories. Still science fiction to us, but these new ideas, it changes the attitude towards other people, because then any criminal, even if you have a double parking ticket, you might be put in jail, executed, and then your organs are taken. So they do have a reflection of what we think of others and what we think of ourselves, I guess, because those people wanted to be eternal. They wanted to live forever, but they devalued others so far that they just became backup organs. But I like this one, seeing a utopia, and it reminds me a little bit of Le Guin when we read The Ones Who Walk Away from Omelas, where you see a perfect place, and here we're with Eosin or Jason this whole time. He's telling us how great Utopia is, how everything else is barbaric, and then at the end, we're given a glimpse of something we can really relate to because it's not so bland, it's not so gray, it looks a little bit more like us. And then we have to ask ourselves, do we still stay with Jason, or do we know that he's wrong? Like, is his utopia totally wrong? At the end, do you feel like, have you gone on a journey for a reason with Jason, or has it just been a kind of wild goose chase and then that weird revelation of this society sucks?
Well, I mean, I think that's exactly where the story fails, in the sense that, like you said, it gestures towards these questions of, oh, is the utopia actually a utopia? Or is the utopia what he just escaped from, traveling the multiverse? But it doesn't really give us time to sit with these questions, because the punchlines, the twists are so rapid fire. You know what I mean? Like it's like if he had just ended with the idea that the utopia was not all it was cracked up to be, and actually drawn out the idea a little bit more, let us sit with it, given us some like chewy details to work with, I think that would have been a great kind of meat of the story. But instead, we end the story with a kind of like a revelation that recontextualizes everything that came before in the story, that makes all of, these hints and all of these, kind of flashbacks and the whole reason for the plot shift into a different light. So I think that in a sense, the sexual twist of the story really undercuts any possibility for thinking about the political aspects of the story. And it's like, if you have to ask yourself, which will you be thinking about for longer? I'll probably spend 15 seconds after closing the book thinking about the sexual twist. But if given the chance, if it was done right, I could have spent, significantly longer thinking about the kind of political twist if the story was developed in that way.
I think that's a very good point. What I would really like to see too is, this doesn't work as well as, say, Zardoz, which is an extremely similar story if you really think about it. But that is a stranger coming to town. Zardoz is the stranger coming to town, and we learn about both cultures that way. This is similar, but we don't really see that town much. We just see Jason's baggage. It's like a stranger brings all of his baggage to town. And then we see more about his own past than we do about the new place that he's in. If Jason were more of a stranger in a strange land and experiencing this Viking culture for longer and realizing, oh, I could be more badass, I could enjoy this, that would be a little bit more entertaining. And we could see a little more clearly the clash of cultures, because you're right, it just is an info dumping revelation at the end, and we're asked to reflect on it. Where Le Guin gives us a question in, I guess, like 2 sentences. This is like 30 sentences that kind of say the same thing. Would you rather be in this society or that society? So yes, I think experiencing it a little bit more and not just being told so much, I think would make it a little bit better. Zardoz is just a masterpiece, is what I'm trying to say.
I won't disagree. Well, Poul Anderson has, I just watched a interview with him, and he has so many books. So I feel like we'll probably run into him again in the future, especially if we continue down this new wave science fiction kick. Dozens and dozens and dozens of novels. So, we'll give him another chance. 3 to 6 months, something like that, and see what we think.
Maybe.
All right. Talk to you later, Bob.
Talk to you later, Zach.